In today's lesson, we are going to be dealing with fractions, decimals, and percents, and we're going to be relating them to one another. So the first set of directions asks us to write each decimal as a percent. And so let's go over real quick again what a percent is. We did this in the last lesson, but let's take a look at the symbol again. It helps us figure out what it's all about. There's our percent symbol. Again, this line right here represents a fraction bar. And so there we have our fraction bar. The two zeros represent the two zeros in 100. And so all it is typically there's a number in front of the percent, and the number is the number on top of the fraction. And so there it is. A percent is just a number over 100. And we're going to use that concept to figure out or to write each decimal as a percent. There's a fast way to do that, but let's go ahead and figure out why we end up moving the decimal 2 spaces to the right each time. Let's go ahead and let's take this 0.56 and let's make a proportion. So if you're ever stuck, if you write a proportion, typically you're going to be able to solve a problem as long as the problem is linear. And so let's take a look at this one. Here we have 0.56, there's our number, and let's just write this as a fraction over 1. And let's set this equal to x over 100. See, I wrote a proportion. I want to find out what it is, what number over 100 is the same as 0.56. So all you have to do is cross multiply when we solve. So if I multiply 0.56 or 56 hundredths times 100, let's see what happens. So when I do this, I'll write down 100 and then 0.56. Now the nice thing about multiplying by 100 is the numbers don't change a whole lot. Let's see what happens. We have, see, 6 times 0 makes 0. We get another 0, and 6 and 1 makes 6. Well, we carry a placeholder and multiply these numbers here, and we end up with a 0, a 0, and a 5. We add this stuff up, we get 5, 6, 0, 0. Well, we have to move the decimal back 2 spaces. That's what the rule says when we have a decimal point. So you count up the spaces. We have 1, 2 spaces. So you move that decimal back 1, 2 spaces. So there's the number, 56. That's what x is. X equals 56. And so what we're going to end up doing, again, we did the x times 1, and that's how I'm getting the 1x here, or just x equals 56. And there we have it, 56 over 100. Well, that's what a percent is. It's a number over 100. So our percent would be 56%. So why is it that we move the decimal 2 spaces to the right? Well, it's because a percent is a number over 100, and you multiply 100 times the decimal form that you have, and that gives you the percent. So moving the decimal 2 spaces to the right is the same number of zeros you have in the 100, and that's why we move it over. So same thing here. So let's go ahead and predict what we're going to end up having here. So again, our answer here was 56%. Let's look at this one. We think if the rule holds, we should move it 2 spaces to the right. So we should end up with 4%. Let's see if it works. Let's take 0.04 and let's write it over 1, and we'll set it equal to x over 100. And again, if I cross multiply the numbers that are diagonal from each other, I end up with 100 times by 0.04 equals x times 1, which is just 1x, or just x. Well, when I do this multiplication, let's see what happens. 100 times 0.04. Well, I multiply and I get a 0, a 0, and a 4. 4 times 0, 4 times 0, 4 times 1. Well, we need to move the decimal back 1, 2 spaces. So 1, 2 spaces. Yeah, sure enough, I get the number 4 again. So I'm getting 4%. It works. Every time that's going to end up working. So again, we'll show it one more time here. So again, when you have a decimal, you want to change it to a percent, you're multiplying by 100. And multiplying by 100 moves the decimal 2 spaces. Well, here there's an empty space. So we have to put a placeholder there, a 0. And so, again, our prediction is that this is going to be, 7/10 is going to be 70%. Let's see if it works. All you do is put a 0.7 over 1, set it equal to x over 100. Why x over 100? Because that's what a percent is, a number over 100. And so when we multiply these numbers, 7/10 times 100, let's see what we get. 0.7 times by 100 equals 1x. Well, off to the side, I'll show you. 100 times 7/10. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 1 is 7. Move the decimal back just one space this time. One space. That's what the little dash here represents. There's one number after the decimal. So one space gives us 70, the same answer we predicted. So that's all it is. Moving a decimal over as changing it to a percent is just multiplying by 100. Multiplying by 100 doesn't change the digits. It just changes the place where the decimal point is. So for this one, we're just going to move it over 2 places. And that's going to give us 2.5%. So just move it 2 spaces to the right, and you'll get your answer. The reason is because a percent is a number over 100. Set up a proportion, you're going to be multiplying 100 by the decimal. Well, that's changing a decimal to a percent. Let's take a look at the next one. It says write each fraction as a percent. So what we're going to end up doing is remembering the same rule we just talked about before. A percent is a number over 100. And so what we're going to end up doing is writing another proportion and cross-multiplying. So let's start with what we have. 13/40. We're going to write a proportion. We need to find out what the percent is. The percent is a number over 100, so I don't know what that number is. I'm going to use x, but this will be our answer once we come up with it. So we're going to set it equal to 100, and then all you do is cross-multiply. And so we're going to multiply the numbers diagonal from one another. Now when we do this, 13 times by 100, and set this equal to 40x. So this time we have a number that is being multiplied by x that's not 1, so it's 40x. Well, 13 times by 100 is just 1300. All you do when you multiply by 100 is add 2 zeros to your number, or move the decimal point 2 spaces. To the right, that is. And then this all equals 40x. Well, when we're doing this division, we're going to divide by 40. There's another rule. So we can take out a factor of 10. If I divide this by 10 and divide this by 10, what happens is these zeros cancel out. So I have a much easier problem. So all I need to do now is do a division problem. I'm going to go ahead and divide 4 into 130, because that's all that's left, because I canceled out these 2 zeros. I reduced by dividing by 10. So when I do that, 4 goes into 13 3 times. That makes 12, and there's 1 left over. So I add a 0, 4 into 10, well, that goes 2 times, and well, I need to add a decimal point. So I'm going to go ahead and add a decimal point there, bring that decimal point up. Now I'm kind of running out of room here, but I end up with 4 times 2 is 8. That leaves us with 2 left over. So I'm going to add that 0 there, bring that 0 down, and 4 into 20 goes 5 times evenly. So there it is. It's 32.5%. There is our answer. Well, let's take a look at another one here. We've got 3/5. So what we're going to do is we're going to write that as a proportion. 3/5 equals a percent is a number over 100. And so all you're going to do from this point is cross-multiply. Multiply the 100 times by 3. So that gives us 300 eventually, and it all equals 5x. So I go ahead and do that work. Again, that's 300 equals 5x. Now we can go ahead and divide by 5. This will give us our answer. So down below, we'll go ahead and set up that division problem. 5 into 300. This one's a little faster, because when I look at it, 5 goes into 30 6 times. And when we do that division, we end up, in the subtraction, we end up with 0. Well, I still have a placeholder. I still need to put another number, and it's 60. And so my answer is 60%. So that's all you're doing on these problems, is setting up a proportion and solving. So let's do another one here. We've got 3/20. So I set that one up. 3/20 equals, my percent is a number over 100. And once I find x, I've got my answer. So let's go ahead and set up our multiplication problem here. Cross multiply, we've got 3 times 100, which is 300, and this all equals 20x. So we get to use that rule again about reducing the fraction when we divide. So instead of just setting up a division problem now, 20 into 300, let's do some reducing. Let's take out these two zeros. And when we take out two zeros, what we are doing is reducing by dividing each by 10. That makes the number a whole lot smaller. And so I can go ahead and set up my division problem now. 2 into 30. And you might know how many times it goes in there. Well, 2 goes into 3 one time, with 1 left over. 2 goes into 10 5 times, evenly, with nothing left over. So there it is. X equals 15. So that's 15%. And there is our answer. Well, one more problem to practice. Let's see if we can come up with it. So on this one, we're going to set 5/12 this time equal to x, our percent, over 100. So we go ahead and do that cross multiplying. Multiply the 5 times the 100, and then we're going to set that equal to 12 times by x. So 5 times by 100 is just 500, and then this all equals 12x. And so from that point, what we can do is just divide by 12. Now we can reduce the fraction, but if you didn't see the reducing right away, because you could divide by 2, and that'll just make the problem easier. So let's go ahead and try that. So there's even more we can reduce it by, but most people don't see what else we can reduce it by. So let's just start by reducing the fraction by dividing by 2. And you could probably do this in your head. See, half of 500. Well, half of 5 is 2, but I have 1 left over, or half of 5 is 2.5. So that's actually it, 250. 250 plus 250 makes 500. And this is over 6. Well, I could reduce it one more time if I wanted to. I see that both of them are still even, so let's do that. So this still equals x. Let's go ahead and reduce it one more time. Let's take out another 2. Make the numbers smaller. Half of 250. Well, think of money. Half of $2 is $1. Half of 50 cents is 25 cents. So $1.25. So 1.25. And then half of 6 is 3. We've made the problem a whole lot easier now. So let's go ahead and set up our division problem now. 3 into 125. So 3 goes into 12 4 times evenly. Now, it doesn't go into 5 evenly. It goes in there just one time with 2 left over. So I have to add a decimal point. Bring down a 0. 3 goes into 20. It goes in there 6 times. That makes 18. Ooh, but we get another 2. So once you start seeing that we got the same number, so you have to do 3 into 20 again, that means the 6 is repeating. So what we can write this as is 41.6 repeating percent. If I wanted to change it to a mixed number, it would be 41 2/3. 2 was what was left over before I added the 0 and the decimal point, and it's over 3. So either way would end up working out as an answer. So next part we'll have a couple word problems for us to try.